Wake up groggy every day.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Artists Almost Always. This is a show that is by artists, with and for artists, and about artists, almost always. My name is Steve Zarrow, and I'm your host. I'm joined today by best-selling author Dr. Pat Boulogne, who is a certified functional medicine practitioner, coach, chiropractor, speaker, and the previously mentioned best-selling author as well. And this episode will be one of the almost always versions of our show, where we are going to be talking about the arts a little bit. I have some questions geared towards that way, but we're not focusing solely on artists or the act of creativity as well. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Pat. Go ahead, say hello. Welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm very, very happy to be here and approach all these topics that are so important to people right now and have a clear conversation about them so people can have clarity, they can keep moving forward, and then they can make better decisions.
And now more than ever, we need that kind of thing, because a lot of us, and I say us because I'm part of that, under that umbrella, my judgment has definitely been, I'll say, impacted by the last 24 months, more so than it ever has at any other time in my life. And my inner voice and my sort of inner debate is in a higher gear than it's been for a long time. So this will be really good information for everybody, whether you're in the arts or not. This is a human topic and a human conversation. So I'm thankful to get to talk. This is our third time talking now too. So I'm glad we finally get to push the red button on it as well. So my first question for you is, what is your bestseller all about? Give us a title, tell us what it's about. And I'd like to know who you mainly wrote it for, who the primary target was for this book for you.
Okay, so to start backwards and go forwards, the book is right behind me. It's Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? And it was written for, when I wrote it, in Hearts of Hearts, I was walking through Boston one day, and it occurred to me, when I lived downtown Boston, it occurred to me that there are a lot of people sick and didn't know it. And so I would stop people and say, "Are you okay? Your face is rather gray." They're going, "Oh, my chest hurts." I said, "How about if we call 911?" And then I would have other conversations like, "I'm really feeling sick to my stomach." "Well, maybe you've got the flu. You got a fever?" "I don't know." I said, "Well," I go, "why don't you get yourself in a cab and get in the car and go home?" And then around the same time, the CDC released a report that 212 toxic chemicals, dangerous chemicals, were in the blood and urine of most Americans. Now, at the time when I was living downtown Boston, I was retired. I sold my business. I was living in Boston. The airport was 30 minutes from me, and I made use of the airport a lot during those times because flights were super cheap out of Boston to go to London or to go, overseas, even to Rome. I used to pay something like $400 a round trip to Heathrow.
That's not a lot.
So, that was a long time ago, that. And so at any rate, so when I started to take a look at it, it just pulled me back because I'm thinking, how is it possible that this many people are sick and they don't know it? I mean, it's just like no one's home, they're walking around. And so I started looking at ways that I could give back. And I really didn't want to go back into work, but I decided that it was the only way for me to do it is to be valuable, be vocal, and be visible, is to start talking about it. And, somebody asked me how was I going to do that? And I said, I don't know. And I woke up one day and said, I need to write a book. I need to write a book about this. So how can I give that information to people so they can make better decisions about how to move forward in their health and their wellness and their well-being? And so I look at all these forms I have when I was cleaning out a drawer, and I came up with all these surveys that I used to do in my office when I had a physical office. And, I started looking at what was similar in each one of them. So what doesn't happen a lot of times in a doctor's office is they don't ever really ask you and go dive deep into your system survey. So what this book does, it's an advocating tool. It is a workbook and it is a guidebook. You would never go to the middle of Africa unless you read a book about it, you had a guide, and someone spoke the language who could speak your language also, as an interpreter. And so I wrote it with that intention in mind so that, the pedestrian population, the average person could read it and understand it. It was like edited by a friend of mine's son, who we would ask him, say, like, Sam, his name was Sam, what does this word mean to you? Because we wanted to make sure that if somebody did this, they could understand what they were reading.
Right, you're using the like a palpable vernacular for the average Joe, and making it sort of a usable metric tool for them. Yeah,
he was 11 years old. Pretty smart kid though. I'd never play Scrabble against him, but he would definitely win. He's such a really, like, he's doing his PhD in aerospace or something like that now. But the point of it is, no, he's like close to 20 now. But at any rate, the whole point of it is that, it gave me a functional tool to give something back from an education that I received, that in a way that people could understand that explanation. I take many articles sometimes that are written for physicians, or physicians write, that are too the verbiage is difficult to understand, and so I make it and I dumb it down, so to speak, so that you could put it, so like an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old could understand it. I'm very, very gifted at being able to take complex and convoluted ideas like that and making them simple, better, faster to understand, so people could get the information, move forward. That's what this book does. This book gives you an opportunity to focus on where your weakest links are in your health, and also know where your strongest links are.
Right.
So I had people tell me when they went through the book, when it was first published, that my doctors never asked me any of those things ever. And I said, because they don't, most medical doctors don't diagnose until you have a flat tire, where you had this like slow leak and you could have repaired it before. So it goes through every system survey, and it goes, and it asks you questions. So how you answer those questions in present time tells me, and should tell your practitioner, especially a functional medicine or a lifestyle medicine practitioner, exactly what's going on and where to put your time, energy, and your money, and where to focus that. So that's when I wrote the book. It just kind of started to gel together and come together, and that's how it ended up being. And that's what made it, and it was that one walk one day in Boston. I just went like, wow, this has got to change.
I meant to ask you, I guess the people in Boston must look very fat and tired just on a visual. I don't know how well that bodes for taking a trip to Boston anytime soon, but well, I hope they feel better at least now.
Well, the thing is about, being sick, fat, and tired is that, if you're tired, I mean, everyone knows that.
Yeah.
They just push through it. It's like, I only have 1 more hour of stuff to do, and it ends up being 5 hours, and, basically if you're fat by how your clothes are fitting you, unless you wear stretchy clothes. And then, because they'll do it for you too. Right. And because if you do, you just keep on growing into them. It's just like a goldfish.
Right, exactly.
Goldfish bowl, right? And
well, where I come from with the weight loss journey.
Yeah,
right? You remember our conversation.
Yep,
I'm at the higher end of the weight that I still do battle with. I used to do battle with closing in on 400 pounds. I was 200 pounds overweight, and my surgery helped me deal with a majority of it, about 3/4 of it. And the last sort of 25 to 30% of it just seems to want to keep coming and going. And I'm told that that's pretty normal. I'm approaching my 10th year, but it has forced me to make a permanent lifestyle change that I was unable to make at the time in my life and any time previously, which was to just simply eat significantly less and only give my body what it needs, and not all the things that the rest of my body wants. I knew that I was sick, that I was fat, and that I was freaking tired as hell. And my wife will even tell you, I struggled for a year just to get past my 33rd birthday, because some sort of weird voice in my head had me thinking, Chris Farley, John Belushi. Not that I thought of myself as an equal to one of those.
Well, that was good. That wasn't your lizard brain talking to you. It was probably your conscious brain talking to you, because your lizard brain would have told you, like when you're having that fluctuation and the fluctuation is going up, it's probably your lizard brain or your primitive brain, what it's called, also talking to you, going, it's okay, you can eat that. It's okay, you can eat that. You deserve that. That's
Right.
your lizard brain talking. The conscious brain tells you, wait, you know, if I eat that, then I'm very prone, and it's easy for me to gain weight. I need to be mindful of not the quantity of food I eat, but the quality of food that
Right.
you eat and how you combine it together. That's the conscious brain. And so if you can tie more positive experiences in with the conscious brain winning like that, then the lizard brain quells down, and then that makes a memory for your mammalian brain, so that when you go to eat better and your weight's on that lower part, it's easier for you to maintain that lower weight of where you really want to be. So I work with people's mindset, motivational mindset, so that, and I give consults in that regard too, in regards to that, and talk specifically to the positive mental attitude and the mindset, proper mindset, and the wellness initiatives. It's encountered to be successful. You know, that's where this book for me is giving me a lot of data and a lot of information, because my goal is to test, not guess. And so this is the first test, so I can see, like, well, you know, what blood work should we really do? You know, instead of, you know, doing a bachelor, if we want to be, you know, more targeted, what targeted supplementation should we look at doing? And if you want to go from point A to point B, then we also need to know how well the liver is getting rid of, because that's the job of the liver, is to get rid of toxins. It's one of the jobs. It has numerous ones, but it's supposed to put those toxins back into your gut, and your gut's supposed to end up, you know, positioning them in a toilet. And so when it can't do that, or if the gut's damaged, then what it does is it gets the food and some other nutrients will get absorbed into the blood too soon. The liver gets overwhelmed. And when the liver gets overwhelmed and can't get it out of the body through the intestinal tract, it will store it in blood, brain, bone, and fat. You know, so if you have toxins in that system, then eventually that leads to chronic illness and disease.
Yeah.
You know, in the year 2030, they say that 50% of the population is going to have some chronic illness or disease diagnosis. But I read an article just 2 weeks ago that said 50% or 55% of the population right now, this is like, you know, 2022, not 2030, you know, those numbers are already accelerated. And so taking, you know, knowing, you know, where do you get your power at, in, you know, in your health? You get your power by knowing, you know, where's my weakest link and where's my strongest one? And what is it do I have to do to, you know, go back and adjust that? So for you, it's just like, if, you know, doing mindset things for you to fix that, you know, like when that fluctuation is going up and down, and going like, okay, so what is it? What's setting that kind of like behavior off, you know, and then you can quell that and you can change how you move forward with that.
I can remember. I can tell you exactly when I turned the corner too. It happened about a year after I lost all that weight. I was down to my lowest. I went from 382 to 208, and I maintained a nice low 200s. I went from a 46 waist to, I was wearing 32s at the time. And the kind of things I was eating every day were very clean, very healthy. I would eat hard-boiled eggs, sometimes just the whites, occasionally a yolk, but mostly just the whites. I would eat a whole avocado with a tiny little bit of salt. I would eat some peanuts. I would have a protein drink with some fat-free, non-fat, sugar-free, non-fat, plain yogurt, Greek yogurt. Very low calorie, very high protein, very low carb, very clean. Not a lot of cooked food, no processed food, and I was doing great. And the minute that I got to a point, I said, well, I'm feeling pretty damn good about myself, I'm going to treat myself to a cup of coffee with a little cream and sugar in it. The minute my body got a hold of some of that stuff for the first time in a year, it changed it. And that was 9 years ago this spring, because I remember I was doing a play at the time. I was looking good. I was feeling good. I had all my nice clothes going on. I was loving it. I was spoiled as hell. I was enjoying it. And at rehearsal one night, I was a little tired. And so I'm going to go get a coffee so I can perk up. And that one coffee that I hadn't had in a year, with those extra, with the dairy and the sugar and the things that I had deprived my body of, I put those things back in. And that was I'm still struggling to let go of all those things. And that was when I started gaining. That was the first time I went back up after the surgery, after my bariatric.
So I can give you a diet that resets how your body handles sugar. Um, and will support you. So like when you go off of that, so you could next time you like sit around like having, because cream has, it has sugar in it too, because it
Yeah,
has lactose,
it
right?
does.
So, but like where you can stay away from like those type of things, like people who just can't, like if a basket of bread hits a table at a restaurant, they just devour it. And if you're really hungry, then you overeat. So you're not only eating that, you're eating everything else,
Right.
which creates this cascade of
Right.
events to happen. But
Getting
there's a
back
real,
to that, getting back to that ketosis
yeah.
is really hard.
It is. Once you go off of it, it's like you've got to like, do those dips, like urine dipsticks and things like that. But the thing is that there was a gentleman who was my mentor in chiropractic. His name was Dr. Victor Frank. He's dead. He died a while ago, but I can remember him saying, he always said, what you got isn't necessarily what you got. And if you don't fix the core problems, this is before they were talking about, going to the root cause and that type of thing. He goes, the problem is going to keep on coming back. So your job as a CSI agent, is like, as a detective, he said, then by through in the CSI. So, is to determine what is the cause of the problem, and treat the symptoms while you're targeting the cause.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I learned how to practice functional and lifestyle medicine. And we were doing it before it was even called functional lifestyle medicine out of my office. That was on Cape Cod. I'm no longer there. And I work virtually only with people at this point in time. And I work with people's doctors too. So I have conversations, like a lot of people are intimidated by their doctor. I'm not. And so I just tell them, ask them this, and this, that's where the advocating part comes in, and then, it's just like, and then you can make an educated decision about how you want to move forward from that.
Right.
But the thing is about, the diet, like when people go off of it, they have an emotional trigger, lizard brain, and the lizard brain, then it tells them mammalian brain, oh, you remember that, and then, it's just like, and then you got to have this huge talk with your conscious brain, to be able to rewind and move forward and have better control of your thoughts, because your thoughts can undo anything, if you don't have a handle on them, can undo anything that you do to get rid of the three things that make you sick, which are trauma, which is inflammation, which are toxins, which is inflammation. And your thoughts can undo those two things.
Those are the three T's.
Yeah, the three T's. Right. It's just like, it can undo those other two T's by 7 to 10-fold. And so it's like, I had a client one time who was so excited about her progress. She goes, I haven't felt like this since I was like 32 and she was 54.
Wow.
And she was going to go on to Costa Rica. And she called me up and said, because I have 24, you can call me anytime. So it's like, my house is your house. So I said to her, she had called me up. She goes, can I have a drink when I'm down there? So the same thing for you, right? It's that sugar. And I said, so let me get it straight. You just got done spending a lot of money. I go, in working on yourself and your mindset. You're feeling like you're 32 again and you're 54. I said, you're going to go down on vacation, which people usually do, and they splurge and they drink and they overeat and everything else like that. And you're going to undo everything that you did.
You're going to celebrate by negating it all.
For a couple drinks. Are you out of your mind? And I said, you can do whatever you want to do. Just know that if you do that, you might be starting all over again. Because where her point was is that she was like, like she was strong when she was in that, and very fearful about her life. I'm going to do this because she needed to have some crisis change for her. And it did change, and she was able to maintain it. I said, so you're going to throw it all to the wind? And start all over again. I go, do whatever. I'm more than happy to help you, but, keep your mindset strong. Be stronger than your biggest excuse.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah. People are often, they wonder, once they succeed a little bit, or they get a taste of success, or they overcome their obstacles, one of the things that happens is they wonder how close to that line they can dance again safely, how far into that water they could walk in, and can I get my toes wet? And then so I wonder, what I wanted to ask is there some kind of a secret sauce to not just making drastic lifestyle changes, because people will consider this drastic, even though it's beneficial and impactful in a positive way. It'll be viewed by the patient the client,
Fine.
is drastic. What's the secret for keeping it in effect and not falling back into old thinking and old neuro pathway activity?
Well, here's the cool part. First off, if you think it's going to be hard, it will be hard. So it's all, what does it start with? It starts with your mindset. So I have found that by talking to people, like sometimes because it's boring to like read labels, on a can or a package and sit there and figure out, so is the protein and the carbohydrates and the fats, like, okay, because if they're paired off correctly, you don't have inflammation and it's an anti-inflammatory meal. So like if you're going to eat your hard-boiled egg, I would tell you to have like 3 small olives or, something like, 3 almonds with it, which doesn't really go in my head together, but the olives do, and then so you have protein and you have your fat. You just need a carbohydrate, have a tomato, and so you could have that and it would make it full and you would feel fuller and you would feel satiated. So, and you have to watch where your brain goes. Wherever your brain goes, your body follows. So, so things that, when I'm talking to people and like maybe sometimes about the 3rd, 4th, 5th, wherever, anytime it happens, I stop, I close the book and go, okay, so what's really going on with you today? And, it's like, oh, my mother came over yesterday, or, we had a family party and you have all those triggers that happened to you when you were younger. I help people bust through those so they're no longer a barrier to their life. And so, and take the mindset and help them go like, well, what is it what happened then? What did you feel? And where is that emotion buried in your body? Because if you don't get rid of that emotion will eat you.
It's interesting how you can kind of see the code in the matrix even when they can't, like they've come to you with the same problem, the same relapse, the same crisis, 2nd, 3rd, 4th time in a row. And they're wondering why. I don't understand. I'm trying. So you see it, you already know.
I see it. And, I have to say I was just thinking every person I ever worked with, ever has always said to me that, and she goes, I came to you to like, 'cause I wanted to lose 15 pounds, or I came to you because I just wanted to have better nutrition. I just didn't know what to do about it. And I got so much more out of this. My last client in California said to me, it's the first time in 17 years I felt like myself. So she was mentally strong. So I help people identify what those glitches are, and we talk about them and we make them be a memory. I help them have a specific way to make them become a memory so that they're no longer triggered by it. And if they do get triggered by it, they're on the telephone with me in a nanosecond going, or like, I got to schedule time with you. Gotcha. Because I don't want this to happen again. I don't want this to ruin my life, because my why now has become being healthy, because I have a husband, I've got parents, I've got girlfriends, I have a community around me. And I want to be supportive of that community. And I also want that community to be supportive of me. So when you have that kind of mindset, then you're unstoppable. And everyone has, and I always say, it's just like when after the 3rd month, I have a tendency like, we got rules. This is my rule. Dr. Pat rule is this, if you make a mistake, then do this. It's like not the end of the world, for Christ's sakes. It's just like, but I always say, if you're going to sin well. Right. I mean, don't go out and have a bowl of French fries. If you're going to go out and have something that really counts for you. To say like when it's just like when I was in chiropractic school and had zero money, except for my student loans. I said, when I get my first check that's over X, Y, and Z from my business, I said, I'm going to get a manicure and pedicure, and I'm going to do them every week. And nice. We all had that one dream and that one thing. So you can do it with your health too, in that regard. But there's some things like, when I order food profiles on people, there are some foods that you should never, ever, ever put in your mouth. So if a food is killing you, even though they tell you it's a health food, like, are you going to eat it? I mean, seriously, I know of a true story.
In a country full of cigarette smokers, as some of them probably will. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Well, that's addictive. You got, in cigarettes, you have a couple problems with cigarettes. First off, they're addictive, and they knew that way long time ago, but they still sold them, and also you have behaviors around cigarettes for a lot of people. So you've got a textured thing, so people can say like, I don't want to, I know I shouldn't smoke. I know it's bad for me, but you got to take a look at what's going on physically, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and how that stacks in and where the high priority is and where to work at it. So from the Dr. Viktor Frankl person, I learned how to take those kind of, you don't treat the addiction, you treat the element of where organ system is affected. Then you look at the emotions behind that.
I could tell you this. I learned after because I want to move into another area. I have another a separate question to ask, and then we're going to come back to the book in a minute. But I wanted to tell you, I learned within hours of my bariatric surgery, from the moment I got home, how addicted to food I was, to food, and I always kind of knew it. You don't get to be 375 pounds and going over without it being some kind of an issue for you, other than it tasting good. But I was straight up, I was legitimately addicted. And what really painted the picture and brought it into focus was when I came home and I was recovering from the surgery. What I was seeing was a lot of I was just laying in bed watching TV. They said, don't move, don't get up, don't exert yourself, water, diet, Snapple, nothing else, no food, no protein. Come back on Friday, we're going to check you out and take the stitches out. So for 4 days, I just sat around, watched TV, and just loafed and healed and recovered and rested. I was fiending. Not only was my body and my mouth fiending food, but every time a TV commercial came on, and oh my God, there were so many of them. I never realized.
I didn't realize how many there were, right?
I beg your pardon. I never realized just how heavily the food addict is marketed to. I was watching Wendy's and Pizza Hut commercials. I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say them. I don't care. It doesn't matter. But I was like drooling. I was like I got to the point, it was like watching porn. I got to the point, I said, I can't look at TV anymore. Put a movie on, put a disc in. I can't look at these commercials. When you see a slice of pizza on a 42-inch screen 2 days after you had surgery, it was troubling. I really,
because your lizard brain was kicking in.
But it wasn't even just those rest days. I blogged about it months later about how I missed how addicted to food I was, how addicted to biting into large things, the act of chomping down into something, what it did for my body, my mindset. It was incredible. Like I couldn't believe how strong of a hold it had on me until I had someone else cut the cord on that hold. I believe, and this is just me, I would have never been able to kill that monster by myself without surgery.
Well, there's, like when evaluating, see, like, for instance, like, when, I would say, like, what you do is before, I had knee surgery. So before I went knee surgery, I said, what's the biggest, most important muscle that has to be strong for the knee? And that is the vastus medialis. It's called VMO. So what the VMO does is it's on the inside of the thigh, and it attaches and it makes the kneecap stay in the right groove. So I made sure when I went to the gym, I did extra exercises to support that muscle before I went and had arthroscopic surgery. Because I wanted the odds in my favor, not theirs. And so, so what I did, so it's the same thing. Like when, the part of this is like, like, where's my weakest link? If you know what your weakest link is, like, let's fortify that, because and also the emotional there's a technique that I learned from another my mentors in chiropractic years ago. His name was Dr. Scott Walker. In fact, I believe he's still alive. He lives in San Diego. But he was like, when you said that I had the ability to see those kind of things, he could look at you and say, like, he told me one time, he goes, you were abandoned. I mean, he was like doing muscle testing on me. He goes, you were abandoned. And I said to him, I'm looking at him, I go, I don't think so. He goes, you were abandoned, and I went like, no, I don't think so. And so what he said, and he told me, it related it to a lung point. And then I thought, well, I had pneumonia when I was 2 years old. And then it occurred to me, well, in 1956 or something, when you took a kid to the hospital and they had pneumonia, they weren't going to let you see your parents.
Right.
So I asked my mother later, I just let him do what he was doing, and I never had a problem ever since then, emotionally or that. So it was called neuroemotional technique. But my mother said I was in the hospital for 2 weeks before they were able to see me. And that's when they kept you in there forever.
So then your body had a traumatic reaction to something that you didn't even remember or realize because it
Right.
happened so young, but the evidence and the remnants of it was still there, and you went to a specialist who could detect it.
Yeah, and then he
That,
used to teach. I used to study underneath him. He was one of my mentors in
interesting.
chiropractic and for his technique. So I did that same technique with other people when I came back to my clinic. When I go, every time I went there, I'm going, wow, this is so cool. And I've helped people get past those, whatever that traumatic instance is, and move forward from that, and anchor it as not a reactive memory, but just a memory. Because when it's just a memory, then it doesn't have any power over you at all anymore. And or whoever's related to, whether it's a person, time, place, thing, or an event. So it's a very, very cool technique, and it's very, very, interesting. I do it when I do it virtually now. Which I did with every client. I always find that there's like things that come up, and instead of talking about nutrition, food, because that's like boring. Like I tell you, it's boring stuff. It's important stuff, but people have other things that are triggering the other parts of their health, and so if you can do that and you can unbury those things and get rid of them, then you're way ahead of the game. And your medical doctor would never be able to do that.
People
Sure.
too many people sort of trivialize the strength and the power behind labeling and identifying as a means of removing something's power. I think like the benefit of therapy, the benefit of counseling, why it doesn't work when you just tell somebody, snap out of it, cheer up, feel better, exercise more and eat less. It's like, no, like this is that's not how those things work. You really have to figure out what it means, where it comes from. And it's not about blame a lot of time either. And people who don't understand mental health and wellness in general think that people who are going through a treatment and an improvement or a change in their lives are trying to blame others. And it's
Mhm.
not often about that. It's about just what you said. It's about labeling, identifying as a means of removing the power. If you know what it is, where it comes from, all of a sudden it doesn't have quite the hold on you that it once had. And I agree with you 100% there.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you, before we circle back to the book and the relaunch, I want to just talk real quick about something that came up last time we talked, and it's on your topic list too. And it's about productivity in a relationship. Because one of the things I found was interesting. Last time we talked, I remember you were a little frazzled about something that you were hoping to get help from your partner on, and they didn't come through or whatever it was. And I think I'd like to hear what you have to say about the idea of where the line is drawn between sort of the love and loyalty and companionship of a relationship versus sometimes I just flat out need you to do the thing you said you were going to do, or I need you to do the thing I asked you to do, like the sort of the business level accountability, for lack of a better term, versus, oh, but I love you so much, can't you just forgive me? I didn't do the like there's I don't mean to make it sound so whatever, so parodic in that way, but I think it's important. I want to hear your thoughts on why sometimes you really do need to be able to
Have
count on and
boundaries.
rely on to depend on the person in your life.
Two words that come to mind: accountability and boundaries. So, when someone tells me, when you're running the business, and on the business side of it, when someone tells you they're going to do something, they're going to do something by a certain time, you expect them to come through. If they're not going to be able to do that for some reason, you expect to know about it before the event happened, as opposed to during or after the event. And so that you can make plans, because if somebody's doing that, then what happens is that, they're not taking into consideration your life, at all, even though they think that they are, and in that realm. So having accountability for somebody, it's like, tell me when this is going to be done, and that, I expect, an update on this date. So you have clarity in your communication about what your expectations are and when those expectations are going to be delivered. And if they aren't, then you have like, well, what's happening? Why is this not happening? Okay, so like, and why isn't there not a conversation about that? sooner or later. So when I ran my practice, we always had a way so that if I was with patients, people could ask me a question. And I always made them make the question, yes or no. And I would circle it because they say, here's the problem, here's the solution. Here's solutions, can we go with that one solution? And then I would just read it and I would circle yes, and I would circle the solution. And then they would come by, they would see I answered that sticky note thing, and I had a file folder that they all went into. So I could go back to, since like, well, that's what I said that. But I think we have to hold ourselves accountable in showing up. And showing up in a way that we're like, we're dealing with that mindset and that attitude and being successful, and saying like, this is what I can do, and being really clear about what you're like, I can't do that, or I can do this. I can do it by this date. I can't do it by that date, and if something jogs the schedule, then be clear about it so people can make better decisions about how they need to move forward. Very selfish, I think, actually. And,
to not show up. It's selfish to not show up and hold up your end.
Yeah. It's just like, or presume that, I know, or you're like, or, on that side. So when somebody has something going on, that level of communication is so, so important. And also, what it does is it's like, because when everything's on the table, both hands are on the table, both sides are, then everybody knows what everybody else is doing.
Right. It's easier to say, it'd be easier for me if you say, I can't do this versus I couldn't do that. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
And also like when that happens and you go like, well, is there, like, okay, so what is it that I need to do to support you to be able to do that? Because if that's not being voiced either, if they're taking on the weight of the world on their shoulders, it's just like, it's like, well, tell me, you said you were going to do this on this day, and did that happen? No. Well, why did that happen? I had this happen, but just think there's to have communication about that or around that. Like when you're married, you do that, but when people sometimes are working, you don't have to do that. And also, there's things that you prep for your business, you would never put your business in jeopardy or in crisis. And it's just like, why would you put your health in crisis? Why would you put your marriage in crisis? Why would you put your other relationships in crisis? Because it's all about relationships. It's all about communication. And it's just being, transparent and upfront. So some people might take that as, wow, that's really direct. Or, somebody said to me about a month ago when we were having a simple conversation, and I made a direct comment. They said, wow, you're so masculine. And I said, you take directness in the truth as being masculine. So does that mean all people who are masculine tell the truth? And it's just like,
that's offensive.
Well, it is, but I just said, and the person that also same person was, on my book, she was a little off-centered about the fat part. So that's when she went on, that attack mode on the way going back. I go, it doesn't resolve anything. It's not productive. It's very counterproductive. And if anything, it makes me definitely not want to work with you, so, and either way, I mean, it's just like, there's not that, that there's not that bandwidth going back and forth. So I think that, in relationship to, and even in our own personal relationships, a lot of people don't have boundaries. They have a lot of people around them that are toxic, or toxic events, the person who's the naysayer, your family who thinks you're crazy because you're doing whatever you're doing. And I hear a lot of different things, a lot of different times. The media who keeps on pumping in information to you, about what this is or what that is. And after the 20th time you hear it so many times that it now seems to be true, even though your common sense inside tells you that's nuts. Who does that anyway?
And then you have toxicity mixed with a lack of education. Like I know someone who didn't respond very well to me revealing that my doctor diagnosed me with morbid obesity. Mm-hmm. She thought the doctor calling me morbidly obese was name calling, he could have been nicer about that.
Oh, I learned a long time ago. Have been dealing with patients for quite a while. When I first started out, I would say, Steve, you might want to consider losing weight. And so, then I graduated to like, Steve, you need to lose 20 pounds. Let's start with that. And, or so start, or 10 pounds, whatever it is, you need to get out and move every day, and keep a record of that. And let's work with that from there, and then I said, look, if you don't end up losing your weight, you're going to die sooner. It's like, I went from, it's just like, and I just found it was much more effective. Like I'm a good doctor. I'm a good diagnostician. I never tell anybody to do something that I wouldn't do myself. And so when, I came from that point of heart-centered, kind of a little bit tough love sometimes, but people need to hear that, or else, because everyone's been going, it's okay. It's just like when I was kid and I was chubby, the lady next door would say like, oh, it's just baby fat. You'll lose it when you're,
Oh my God.
You're a teenager.
I was 16 hearing that.
Yeah. I mean,
my gym coach, it's baby fat. You're going to lose it. Dude, I drove here in a Buick. Like, it's not baby fat.
I like that. Dude, I drove here in a Buick.
It's not baby fat.
But it's true. I mean, it's just like we have, it's just like, we can't stop babysitting people because they don't have enough money to pay me to babysit people. I want to have real conversations with people so they can get the information they need to get so they can make better decisions about how to move forward. So, it's just like, you don't have like, a 2-hour time span. I'm going to tell you, I give a lot more time than a medical doctor does. In that 15 minutes, if you don't ask them the right questions, you're out the door and you're talking to your spouse or your friends and go, what did he say? And you go, I don't know. I can't tell you how many times patients came back. I have no clue what he said to me. Because they don't have their mindset before they go in, say, hey, doc, I got these questions. Here's, I need to have these questions answered. And he's going, breathe in, go, great, I'll ask you why you're doing this. So breathe in and breathe out. Because they already did the vitals before the doctor came in anyway. I feel very lucky. I feel very awoken. Like I had people advocating my weight loss, but nobody really had to push me to this. I had known for years I was going to eat myself into an early grave. I was digging this grave with a knife and a fork. And I got to a point where I passed the year that I thought I was going to die. And I said, I'm on borrowed freaking time now. And I'm still gaining. It's not, it's not even like I turned the corner after I lived longer than I thought I was going to live. So I went to the bariatric seminar with that openness, with that awakenness. Like, I'm here to get better. I'm here to fix the problem. And like, I knew you needed to do something drastic. You needed to urgently. You need to do a 180.
Yeah.
And that's what you did. So that was, it's just like you made the right decision for you.
I threw the anchor right out the side of the window, and I had to turn that ship around like instantly. I didn't waste any time. And I don't know why exactly I got into that point. I had just eaten enough. And that's what I've had friends and family who've come to me who've had the surgery since then. They've read my blog. They liked the sound of it. They saw something about me in the paper or whatever, and they wanted to get it done. They went to the same doctor. And I would tell them exactly the thing I told myself many, many times. I had that surgery when I was 35, almost 36. I had eaten enough food in those 35 years and change for a whole lifetime. My POV on that is I've eaten that meal. I've eaten enough Thanksgivings to last me till I'm 80. If I make it to 80, then I'll allow myself to finally feel deprived. And that's why I tell people all the time, just look at the food, look at the meal, look at the day, whatever, the bowl of chips, the Super Bowl, whatever it is. You already ate that. You had it already. You had enough. You went to that party. You danced to the dance. You're done. You had it. What are you missing? What is the turkey and the stuffing going to taste magically different this year than if you didn't have the surgery? Than it did previous years? It doesn't change. You had it already. And that really resonates a lot with them. And I think I have one friend who's 29 weeks out from surgery now, I think, and he said that's got him through more than a couple times.
Well, it's like we never know how we're going to be impactful on somebody else's life. When I had my office, a patient asked me, she goes, Dr. Pat, how do you do it? And I said, what do you mean? How do I do what? And so how do you do it? I mean, you've got a lot of energy, And if I didn't, I'd be dead already, from doing this and dealing with a bunch of different people. And she goes, no, but I heard you're getting divorced. I mean, that was like a mic drop in my office, because I never talked about my personal life in my office ever. And so I just said to her, I go, gosh, where'd you hear that? And I said, maybe I should, and I just didn't say, maybe I should call my husband or something like that. I just said, well, and I said, you know what I do? I get up every morning and I think what a great opportunity that I have to come in someplace where people want to see me because they know I do good work. And I know that I can get them better so that they can live longer, better, and healthier,
Right.
Mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So how do I do it? I take good care of myself. If I eat well, I think well, I do good, and I have fun. And I go, those are my key elements. I go, rarely will you ever see me put dessert in my mouth. Rarely, and I just never had it. I think I might buy ice cream for a particular event type thing, a dinner I'm making that has a certain recipe for a French type of thing with blueberries or something like that on it. But I don't ever, it's not a normal parcel that I buy in a grocery store. I stay in the aisles that have vegetables in them, fresh organic vegetables. And I stay in the aisles where I need to have stuff like, I want water. I need to have filtered water, and I look at, wines that complement my foods. I just don't buy the cheapest wine, and because if it doesn't digest your food, then you're not going to digest it either.
Right.
And you're going to have, bloated, you're going to end up gaining weight. And also putting foods together that were hard. And I said, and the other tidbit that I never, ever told anybody, but I talk about now is that after I had lunch, I had a 3-hour lunch every day. So I went from 8 to 12 and I finished somewhere between 12:30 and 1:45. And I started up at 3 again, and I worked from 3 to 6. And sometimes I didn't finish till 7 or 8. So my ideal office hours are from 8 to 12 and 3 to 6. But after I had lunch, no matter where I was at, I would lay down on a chiropractic table in my office and I would take a 30-minute nap.
My God, that sounds like heaven.
And then I would get up and I'd come out of the room, and my staff would always be in horror when I said, let's rock and roll. And,
Isn't it amazing how so many of these things that we need, like basic things, like a 30-minute nap, to some people sounds like idle time that is wasted, unproductive, idle, wasted time. To some people, where it's absolutely vital to your body and to your mind and to your total state of wellness. Why do some people have struggles getting over this hurdle of
because
they view it as idle time?
They might have foggy brain. They might not be able to organize their thoughts. They might not think very highly of themselves. And that nurturing of self-love, self-care, and they also, when you said why is it idle time? It's just like, it's their perception, it's their mindset. So you're not going to change. You can't be successful, or you can be more successful in a diet, but you've got to handle the 4th pillar of health. And you got to have the 5th pillar of health working with it, so that you have a properly functioning nervous system, proper posture, and posture biomechanics, and that first piece, that 4th pillar, is positive mindset and positive mental attitude. And then you have the wellness initiatives are the diet, the exercise, and your sleep. So if you have, so the equation is that I always give out is positive mental attitude, proper mindset, plus, wellness initiatives, and that would include the spine and the posture, because the brain controls and coordinates all functions of the body. You need your health for everything, and you got to feed it. It's like you drive a Ferrari. You're going to buy, if you can afford to buy a Ferrari, you would afford to be able to afford the gasoline that goes in it, not buy, like low octane gasoline.
Right. And then the other important thing that people overlook is, in that, using your exact analogy, sometimes you need to take that son of a bitch out in the left lane, put it in 5th gear, and let it out,
and let all the crap go out of it. So that's when you do a detox. I have a really great detoxification system that I do with people, and it actually tonifies the liver to do its job better. But you've got to fix the gut first before you do the detox, because you don't want the toxins in your system to go back into your intestinal tract when it's not functioning properly, because you want those toxins out of your body. You don't want them to recycle and end up in blood, brain, bone, and fat. I said that before. So, but it's just but it's a really cool 10-day thing that you can do 2 or 3 times a year that helps you function better, live better, think better, sleep better, and you start choosing different foods that you eat that make you do good things. Like I was in a grocery store one time and I had 2 broccolis in my hand. One was organic on the right side, and the other side was just typical broccoli. And this woman thought I was really weird because I was looking at them very pensively, and she asked me why I was thinking about. And I said, well, I was thinking about how broccoli's like dating. And she said, really? She's going, uh-oh, it's like woo-woo person.
Yeah, she thought a dirty joke was coming, probably.
Well, I said to her, like the broccoli, I said that is the, regular broccoli, the GMO broccoli, and that looks like broccoli. It smells like broccoli, but it doesn't have the nutritional components of broccoli because it's GMO, and it's genetically altered, genetically modified. And I said, that's like the guy who keeps you out till 2:00 in the morning. You had an absolute blast. You danced all night long. You threw your shoes off in the living room, and you danced all the way up the steps, and it's just like, that's that guy, because he's sleeping in the morning and you got to get up and go to work and you look haggard. And then the organic broccoli is the guy who wants to make sure that you eat well, think well, move well. He wants to make sure that the bed's comfortable for you and that you have the covers up, and wants to water walk and feed you. Is there anything else I can get for you? Because when he does that for you, you automatically want to do that for him. So he's the nice guy. And she just said, wait a minute, which one was the organic broccoli? And I said, the one in my right hand. And she reached over and grabbed it out of my right hand. She goes, get your own, and laughed, and walked away. But I just love the story because it's so really apropos about when we look at food in a different way, because everybody doesn't want, nobody really wants to ever date the bad guy. Like, you might want to go out with them a couple of times, but you never want to do it permanently. And you want to eat, and you want to be water walked and fed. You want to be cared for, and you want to be loved. You're not going to ever get love from the broccoli. It doesn't have any nutrients in it. And, so your body will be depleted of those things too. And you're always hungry for them. You're always looking for them someplace else, and you don't necessarily always know where that comes from.
Thank you so much for doing this. I'm sorry we ran over, but it's great talking to you always.
Oh, we talked about so much. I don't even know. I'm going to listen to this whole thing so we can so I can understand what I said.
That's, I was the same way. I came in for my first episode with a little bit of a script. I wasn't on script at all. I found once I started reading it, I preferred better.
It doesn't work. It's so much.
It's so much better.
It's so much better.
I really appreciate you being here, and I thank you so much. I'll make sure we get all this out. We'll cross promote. We'll share, and I look forward to doing this again soon. Thank you so much,
Steve. Thank you so much for an opportunity to help you, help your guests, and all your listeners. It's my pleasure. If they can reach out to me anytime.